we are talking about a community that came out of the war zone in Burma. The war that has been going on for 66 years, and these people did not live in the cities. They lived literally in the war zones. Their villages were burned down. Frequently, they fled in the forest. They hide if they were chased, if they heard boots of the Burmese soldiers, they fled again. If they heard the boots, they fled again. And they kept running like that. And they called those temporary shelters their homes for many times until they came to a refugee camp and then came to the United States. So we are talking about a generation of people who did not get to go to school for the whole generation. And working to help them in this country, in the system. This is the first world country. There was so much to do, and as students ourselves, we thought probably we cannot possibly help them, or help all of their problems, or help all the people in the community, but we could help young people or people who would like to learn so that they can learn and help themselves. So that's how the idea came about to start an education center. And I always believed, personally always believed that through education we can liberate ourselves. And we live, education is, for me and for my family, education is a practice of freedom. So based on that belief and idea, we started this community center and work with the community.
I know that, but the things a lot of people don't understand is that we come here as the first place because we are at the line of life or death. We're not looking for opportunities, the first reason that we come here. It's whether you die or you fight and you escape. And I know that even like people here today, they are working every day to get a better life and a better opportunities. So I feel like a lot of times people think the reason we come here as first place is because of greed. And a lot of time we get like, criticized. We get a lot of misunderstanding for that. And at my school, we currently have a referendum because there's a carrying capacity, like because our school needs more like school extension. And so the school board meeting, they recently has a school board meeting. And as the school board meeting, I volunteer as one of the National Honor Society member to help pass out the paper. And I heard a lot of parents saying things about how taxes have been raising because of immigrant kids or refugee kids. And they complain about those things. And a lot of time, like I said, because people think because we come here at first place because of greed, I have been hearing a lot of negative things. And as much as I don't like to hear those things, some of them are true, some of them are not. And I'm thankful to those people because they remind me every day not to take the things I get to experience and being able to go to school again, not to take those things for granted.
I had a class of first graders. It was my very first class, and I had Maite Baron Cortez in my class. And I always had called her Maite. And she never had a problem with it until just one day. I guess that's how 6-year-olds are. And we're in math class, and she's raising her hand, and I said, "Yes, Maite?" And she kind of looks at me like this and goes, "Can you not call me by that name?" And I said, "I think that's what I've been calling you. What would you like to be called?" And she goes, "Well, you said that like my Mexican name, and everyone calls me Maite." And I said, "Okay, well, let's have a conversation about this. That's what your mom calls you, right?" She goes, "Yeah." "That's what your grandma calls you, right?" "Mm-hmm." And so I said, "So I'm going to call you Maite. Is that okay? Because, I'm Mexican too. I can spin it, She goes, "Yeah, that's fine." Well, I turn around, and then she goes, "Can I call you Mr. Rangel?" And I said, "You can call me Mr. Rangel. Everyone else calls me Mr. Wrangle, but yeah, that's fine." And in that instant, I kind of realized that I had been living 23 years of my life going by Wrangle, and I didn't even really know why. So I went back. This is this year. Teach for America has diversity conversations as part of its programming. And one of my conversations or dialogues that I was having, one of the teachers said, hey, you're Mexican and you have a Mexican last name. Why don't you go by Rangel? And I was like, oh, it's just going to be too difficult. No one's going to know who I really am. And they're like, yeah, but that's what you really are. That's who you really are. It's your identity. I was like, yeah, you're right. So went back with my grandma. I was like, Grandma, how am I like allowing myself to be called Rangel? My dad calls himself Rangel, my uncles. And she said, Mijo, it was something that they learned at school. Like at the bank, my grandma will correct anyone. She'll be like, you know, I'm Mrs. Rangel, but my uncles and dad have changed it. And she said, they didn't want to be outcasted. They didn't want to be different, so they changed it to Rangel. We've been asked if we were German. They're like, oh, that must be a Rangel. And I'm like, no, it's not Rangel. But I had this, you know, deep feeling like if I'm living my life as this teacher who, you know, has 30 kids in my classroom every day, 20 to 30 kids, I'm not serving as a best reflection of their culture and their identity by allowing myself to go by Rangel. So this year, this summer, changed it real quick. I came in with my new class, who were fourth graders last year, and they're like, why did you change your last name? I was like, funny story, I actually didn't change it. It's been this way the whole time. And it's encouraged a lot of conversations in my classroom about identity and like being who you actually truly are and, you know, being affirmed in that way.
For a long time, they would say, oh, just go to the ESL teacher and they'll fix you. They'll teach you English, and then you can kind of come to my content class, and we can then start learning because you've learned English now. Well, that's just not effective at all. And oftentimes, another strategy would be to pull them out of that content time and from their English-speaking peers and segregate them in a way, and say, well, we're going to learn over here while the rest of the class is doing this. And so you have somebody who comes with uninterrupted schooling, and now it just become even more uninterrupted, right? I mean, it's continuously being interrupted because they're being pulled out. And so I think what schools are struggling with is who owns these students? Well, the answer is everybody owns these students. And so English learning has to happen throughout the day. It's just not something that happens in isolation for 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day. And so when we talk to schools, we call this the 250 versus the 1950. If you service a student with English, whether it's an ESL class or it's some sort of co-teaching model for, say, 30 to 40 minutes a day, which is seems like that's doable. That's actually really hard in a lot of places, and that's even on a good week that happens because the ESL teacher may be pulled to translate for a family, or they may be pulled to go this or that, and so they don't have the staffing's not quite adequate enough. So, you know, on a good week, you get 250 minutes of instruction. Well, if you embed it throughout the day where every teacher understands the linguistic needs of these students, the cultural needs of these students, and provides equitable learning through content and English at the same time, you get to like 1,950 minutes per week. And so to put this with a sports analogy, we say, let's take Andrew Luck. If he throws 250 passes versus 1950, which week is he going to be better? Well, he practiced more.
I know that especially ENL teachers, they don't get enough credits or pay for what they have done. And especially since this week is a Teacher Appreciation Week, not just this week, but every day. If you're a teacher sitting here tonight or watching us live stream, thank you so much for what you have done. And especially if you're an ENL teacher, as an ENL student representing all English as new language learners, we thank you, we love you, you make a difference. You might not get enough praise or enough pay or enough credits for what you have done, but you are making a difference every day in our life. And thank you for that. And we don't say that dentists are bad when their patients have cavity. But when their students do bad, teachers get a lot of time. They would get this thing and they would get pressure because usually they don't meet the bar that the school had set for, which are too high to meet, even for a lot of time for the native students. You are the unsung heroes of our society and community. We love you and thank you.